What's up guys, welcome to today's video of Chevreuse guide. From the paper, she seems like a totally broken support that's on par with Kazuha in Overload team. But is she really that strong? Well, let's find out together in this video. Now before going into the comparison, let me ask you a question. Are you still buying Welkins or crystals through the regular in-game store? If you do, stop doing that right now and check out lootbar.gg for 20% more discount. Not only it offers a much better price, but it's also a very trustworthy platform with fast and secure transactions. All top-ups are done via the official Horriverse route, so you won't miss out any double bonus if you haven't used it yet. What's even better is, if you're new to this platform, you'll get another 5% discount on your first purchase. So basically, instead of $100, it's only $75 for the highest amount of crystals, saving you almost $30 just like that. So be sure to check out lootbar.gg in case you are in need of any extra primogems. Links in the description. Chevreuse is actually extremely easy to build. All you have to do is to bring her HP to 40,000 and you can do whatever you want for the rest of her stats. For me, I went for more energy recharge just to trigger the attack buff for the Noblesse Oblige. That's also the reason why I chose the Fontaine HP Spear. As for her talent, focus on the elemental skill for healing. Personally, I see no reason to upgrade it beyond level 6. Just for your information, each talent level only improves it by a merely 100. So you can decide for yourself whether it's worth upgrading or not. Luckily, all her supportive abilities are on her passives, saving you resources building her. Passive 1 gives you a maximum 40% attack buff with 40,000 HP, so make sure she has 40,000 HP before anything else. Now the passive 2 is the main core of Chevreuse, a 40% resistance shade for both elements when you trigger Overload. This is an incredibly powerful effect that makes her literally on par with Kazuha when combined with all her other kits. But of course, unlike Kazuha, this comes with heavy price. For one, just like Nero, it limits your team to only Pyro and Electro. But unlike Nero who changed Bloom entirely, there's no change to Overload reaction whatsoever. So it still remains as an absolute trash reaction that sends enemies flying all around you. But that's not all of it just yet. The worst part lies on its 6 seconds duration. That means you have to keep triggering the stupid Overload for the passive to stay active. So not only you have to consistently suffer from Overload, but also it puts yet another huge restriction to your team build because it requires constant Pyro and Electro application, and Chevreuse herself doesn't really have that. By the way, you shouldn't ignore this passive at all, otherwise she will be left with only a 10% buff and a pathetic healing, which is definitely not worth a slot in your team. So with all these restrictions, there's not much room for team variations. No matter how you choose, it's basically a combination of these characters. Pretty simple, right? So without further ado, let me show you some best examples. Since Raiden is currently out now, I'll start with her first. This is literally the full team from her banner. While it kinda works, there's one thing you should know. There's no off-field Pyro in this team. So to extend the passive for longer duration, make sure to apply more Pyro with Chevreuse by using both her EQ at the same time. But even if she does, Sarah will consume all Pyro with her burst, so there will be no more Overload after this. As a result, the buff will only cover the first few slashes of Raiden's burst, which leads to massive damage drop afterwards. 6 seconds is just too short for this. It's even shorter than Sarah's Electro buff, which lasts for 7 seconds. So that's why I still prefer Kazuha over C0 Chevreuse. But as a 4-star alternative to Kazuha, I would say she did a pretty good job. Of course, that's only if you have CC Sarah. If you don't, just stay away from Hypercarry and try this team instead. Compared to previous team, this team is easier to play and far more stable. Not only you have 2 DPS to deal damage, but also Chevreuse buff basically becomes permanent with Xiangling's Pyro. This makes her better than Kazuha because you don't have to worry about the double shroom. Anyway, this team is exceptionally strong against enemies with high resistance, particularly this freaking piece of trash. But in normal situations, you should trade out Chevreuse for C0 and go for normal rational because Vaporize is still stronger than Overload. The biggest problem with Cyno is the long burst duration that gets cancelled when switching character. This makes him unsuitable with more supports, namely Kazuha. But now with Chevreuse, Cyno finally received his first support that shares lethal resistance even though it's bound to Overload. But honestly, it's actually not that bad. Cyno is able to nullify the side effects of Overload with his chasing power. Besides, Beidou's damage reduction really helps you survive with only Chevreuse healing. Honestly, this might be one of the best budget teams for Cyno since you don't need any 5-star character for this. Another variation of Cyno Overload is with Bennett instead of Beidou, but I don't really recommend this team since Overload will always push enemies outside of his circle buff. Besides, without Electro Resonance, Cyno has a huge energy issue in this team. So overall, I really don't recommend this team unless it's for Hydro 2-par. Well, maybe not. Anyway, that's all for the Electro DPS, so let's move on to the Pyro DPS now. Chevreuse is a very good buff for those who can't utilize Vaporize well. Yoimiya is the perfect example of this. Being a ranged archer means she won't be affected by Overload's debuff at all, so no need to chase after enemies like everyone else does. That means just for this team, Overload actually works as a positive buff as it compensates Yoimiya's lack of AoE. Just like for Cyno, Beidou is extremely crucial in this team, not just for her damage reduction and sub-DPS, but also the resistance to interaction. Overall, against single target, this team is a bit weaker than Vaporize team with Yoimiya, Yelan, Yunjin, and Zhongli. But when there's more than one enemies, this team becomes far stronger than what we had before. Similar to Yoimiya, Yanfei is unsuitable with Vaporize mainly because she applies Pyro a bit too fast. That's why she should join Overload instead. Compared to Yoimiya, Yanfei's tracking is even better than her, so Overload's debuff won't affect her at all. Besides, her kit allows her to trade Beidou with Bennett for more damage. For one, her charge attack already has a decent AoE, so she won't need to rely on Beidou's sub-DPS when facing clouds. Secondly, if you have a C4, she can generate shields all by herself, which provides her full resistance to interaction. And last, Yanfei is a very energy-hungry character, so having triple Pyro in her team definitely helps greatly in her rotation. Aside from the previous Pyro DPS, I strongly not recommend any other DPS to bring Chevreuse. Lyney doesn't need Chevreuse buff at all. Bennett, Kazuha, Zhongli, all of them buffs Lyney just as strong as her, but without the requirement of Overload. Besides, all these characters do more than just increasing damage. Bennett's healing, Zhongli's shield, and Kazuha for grouping and crowd control. I wouldn't trade any of them for Chevreuse and stupid Overload. And last, Hutao is probably the worst with Chevreuse. She already has a very perfect team with double Hydro, which allows her to Vaporize on every charge attack, dealing massive damage. So why waste her Vaporize potential and join Overload? Not only you deal less damage with it, but also you have to chase enemies all around, which is especially painful for C0 Hutao. So do yourself a favor and stay away from Overload. The last thing I'm gonna show you is a team with only off-field sub-DPS. While it really does seem like working, I find it a waste of potential for both parties. Fischl and Miko can do much better in Quicken team, while Xiangling is far stronger than this with Vaporize. So at the end of the day, Overload sucks. Even a support that's as strong as Chevreuse struggles to find a good team because of that. So in conclusion, Chevreuse is a really great support, but you don't have to pull or build for now. All these teams I show are just playable and none of them are meta at all. But that's only for now. There are still 2 upcoming Pyro and Yeto characters in the Lake Fontaine version. If Chevreuse is a great support for them, I bet you have rerun together with them. So until that time, save out your Primogens. Anyway, that's all for this video and I hope it's helpful for you. Thanks for watching and I'll be seeing you in the next one.